Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be looking at gift card scams today. We've got
Yeah.
some pretty crazy news reports, and we'll even get a glimpse into the world of scammers themselves. Should be interesting.
Yeah, these scams are fascinating because they're often just the tip of the iceberg, like the first step in much bigger criminal activities.
So let's dive in. We're going to try to figure out how these scams actually work, why they're so successful, and most importantly, how you can avoid getting caught in one. We'll start with a report from NBC Bay Area about these two brides-to-be who had a really terrible experience with Target gift cards.
This case is really a good example of how sophisticated some of these scams can be.
Hmm.
It's not just like someone shoplifting a commodity.
Right.
This is organized crime,
Right.
possibly even operating across state lines.
Yeah, so these brides-to-be, Rena and Hasai, they found their Target gift cards were completely drained before they could even use them, and it seems like they're not alone. NBC stations all over the country are reporting similar stories.
And it's not just Target either. It's a problem all over the retail industry. Tampering with these cards is a widespread issue.
Yeah, so the Target case is a good example of how these scams work. A man named Sun was caught in Sacramento messing with Target gift cards. He'd peel off the sticker, the one covering the P on it, put the cards back on the shelf. Then, when someone bought the card and loaded money onto it, he could electronically steal the money.
Yeah, and the prosecutor in the case said it was really difficult to spot any tampering. These cards were manipulated so precisely, it's really no wonder people are falling victim.
Right, and get this, they found over 5,000 Target gift cards in this guy's son's car.
5,000.
And phone records actually showed that he was traveling all over the U.S. This is a pretty massive operation.
Yeah, that fact that he was very mobile, as the prosecutor put it, really just suggests how widespread these operations can be. They're not just limited to, one city or state.
It is a little unsettling how easily these scammers can move around and operate in different areas.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder just how big of a problem is this really?
Well, to understand the scale of it, we can look to this interview that NBC Bay Area did with Robert Tripp. He's an FBI special agent in charge of the San Francisco field office. He had a pretty shocking statistic. Billions of dollars are stolen every year through these compromised cards.
Billions with a B.
Billions. It's a huge amount.
Wow, that is a lot of money. That's insane.
It is. And what's interesting is that Agent Tripp actually explained that gift card scams are often just a small part of a much bigger network.
Ooh,
Criminals are selling these compromised cards on a secondary market. And he actually describes it as a way to generate untraceable cash.
so they're basically using gift cards to launder money.
Exactly. They sell the cards at a discount, and the buyer, might not even realize they're part of a money laundering scheme.
Wow.
But after several transactions, that money becomes almost impossible to trace.
It is crazy how something as ordinary as a gift card can be used for something like that, to support larger criminal activities.
It really shows how we need to be more aware. You know how we have security tags on clothing and stuff in stores?
Hmm.
It's kind of ironic that gift cards, which can be used to launder billions, are just sitting there out in the open.
That is a really good point. What does the FBI suggest that we do to avoid these scams?
Well, Agent Tripp recommends buying gift cards from behind the counter if possible, or from a locked case. Always look for signs of tampering.
Okay.
Like, is the packaging loose?
Right.
Are there any smudges on the card number, the PIN, or the barcode?
Right.
And probably the most important tip is to use the cards as soon as possible.
Before the scammers can drain them.
Exactly. Now, to kind of get inside the mind of a scammer and see how they operate, let's take a look at this video by a YouTuber named Tommy G.
Okay.
He gives us a peek into this world of something called punching.
Punching. What is punching?
So punching is essentially using stolen credit card information,
Oh, okay.
which is usually bought on the dark web.
Mm.
And then they use that to buy things online.
So how does this punching thing actually work in real life?
Well, in the video, they have this example using Raising Cane's chicken. So the scammer buys a stolen credit card online, uses it to order chicken online, and then proceeds to eat the chicken in an abandoned warehouse.
That's a pretty strange image.
It is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it just shows how easy it is to actually pull off these scams. The video also explains how credit card info gets stolen in the first place. Like those skimmers at gas stations.
Yeah.
When you swipe your card at the pump, these skimmers can capture your card details and even your PIN.
Oh, wow. So even filling up your gas tank can put you at risk.
Yeah, definitely highlights the need to be careful. The video goes on to explain something called a BIN,
A bin.
which stands for Bank Identification Number. It's on your credit card.
Okay.
and it helps scammers figure out how much money they might be able to steal from your card.
Oh, so they're not just randomly choosing cards. They're actually looking for ones with a higher likelihood of having a bigger balance.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that they try to justify what they're doing. They argue that they're not stealing from individuals because the victims usually get their money back from the bank. They see banks as easy targets.
That's a pretty messed up way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it is. But it gives us a glimpse into their mindset and how they try to rationalize their actions. And it's not just credit card scams. The video also talks about check fraud and even using stolen checks to exploit people who are already in a tough spot financially.
Yeah, it's just wrong.
It really highlights the fact that scams can happen anywhere
Right.
and target anyone, really.
Yeah, and that leads us to an ABC News segment where an FBI official warned about this increase in scams, especially investment fraud.
Right.
It seems to be a growing problem.
Yeah, it's becoming a huge issue.
What kind of investment scams are they seeing?
Well, they're seeing a surge in cryptocurrency scams,
Right.
which I think ties back to that idea of untraceable cash.
Right, because cryptocurrency transactions can be very difficult to trace. Makes it attractive for money laundering.
Exactly. And they're also seeing this huge spike in impersonation scams.
Impersonation scams.
Yeah.
What's that?
These scammers pretend to be someone in authority,
Well.
like a government official
Oh, okay.
or a bank representative,
Yeah.
to trick people into giving them money or information.
Are they doing this online over the phone?
It can start with a call or an email, but now some are even showing up at people's homes
What?
to get cash. They're getting really bold.
Wow, that is frightening. It seems like these scammers are becoming more aggressive, taking bigger risks.
They are. The statistics are pretty alarming. Americans reported losing over $12.5 billion to fraud in 2023.
Wow.
And 2024 is on track to be even higher.
So with all these scams out there, what can we do to protect ourselves? Did the FBI offer any advice?
Well, the FBI official emphasized that we need to take our time. Don't let anyone pressure us into making a quick decision
Okay.
if something feels off or too good to be true.
Right.
Trust your gut and just be skeptical.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It's easy to get caught up in the moment, especially if someone's being really pushy or playing on your emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about protecting yourself from gift card scams specifically.
Okay.
Touched on some of this earlier,
Right.
but it's worth repeating. When possible, buy gift cards from behind the counter
Okay.
or, a secure location, a locked case. Always inspect the card before you buy it. Look for any signs that the packaging has been tampered with.
Right, like tears or scratches.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there are any areas that look like they've been re-glued.
What about the stickers that cover the pin in? Anything specific to look for there?
Yeah, those stickers should be firmly attached. They shouldn't be peeling or lifting at all.
Okay.
If that sticker looks damaged or loose, pick a different card.
Okay, that's a good tip.
And, even if the packaging looks fine, it's still possible that the card itself has been compromised.
So what should we do?
Check the balance as soon as possible.
Oh, okay.
Most retailers have a website or a phone number you can use to do this.
Right, so if the balance is 0 or lower than it should be, you know something's wrong and you can report it right away.
Exactly. And speaking of reporting,
Right.
it's really important to report any suspected gift card scams.
And who would we report that to? The retailer? The police? The FBI?
Well, it depends. If you think the card was tampered with at a particular store, definitely report it to the store manager.
Okay.
And if you've already bought a card and you think it's been compromised, you should report it to the retailer and you can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC.
Okay. Good to know. We've got options, so we can try to stop these scammers.
Yeah. And remember, even if you haven't been a victim yourself, reporting these scams can help law enforcement identify patterns and uncover, these bigger operations.
So we can all play a role in protecting ourselves and each other. It's a team effort.
That's right. We're all in this together. Now let's move on to these impersonation scams.
Okay.
We talked about them a bit earlier, where the scammers pretend to be authority figures
Right.
to trick people.
Yeah. How are these scams so sophisticated and how do they connect to what we've been talking about?
Well, these scams are tricky
Yeah.
because they exploit our trust in authority figures.
Right.
And as we heard from that FBI official,
Right.
they're becoming increasingly common.
So how can we protect ourselves from falling for these impersonation schemes?
First step is awareness. Just know that these scams exist and be skeptical. of anyone contacting you claiming to be from a government agency or a bank or any organization, really.
Right. So don't just take their word for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Verify their identity independently.
Yeah.
Legitimate organizations won't pressure you to make a quick decision
Okay.
or threaten legal action if you don't comply.
So if you ever feel pressured or threatened, that's a big red flag.
Huge red flag. And never give out personal or financial info over the phone or email
Right.
unless you are absolutely certain you're talking to a legitimate representative.
And if you're not sure,
Hang up.
right.
Delete the email
And contact them directly.
through a verified number or email address.
Exactly. Better to be safe than sorry. And these scammers are always changing their tactics. So we have to stay informed about the latest scams and how to protect ourselves.
That's a great point. Are there any resources you recommend for staying updated?
We already mentioned some. The Federal Trade Commission,
Mm-hmm.
the FTC, they have a ton of info on their website about how to spot scams
Right.
and how to report them.
And the FBI also has a website dedicated to internet crime,
Right.
which includes scams and fraud.
Yeah. And a lot of banks and credit card companies have fraud prevention departments
They do.
that offer helpful resources and tips to their customers.
Yeah, there are tons of resources out there.
So no shortage of information.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of, taking the time to educate yourself and stay vigilant.
Because knowledge is power,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to protecting ourselves from scams and fraud.
I completely agree. And this brings us back to that thought-provoking question we posed earlier. In a world where technology is constantly evolving and scammers are always finding new ways to exploit these vulnerabilities, how do we, as individuals and as a society, stay one step ahead?
It's a really important question,
It is.
and one that requires us to keep having this conversation and working together. We have to be proactive, share information, create new security measures, and just keep educating ourselves and each other about these constantly changing scams and fraud tactics.
You're absolutely right. It's only by working together and raising awareness that we can really protect ourselves and make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
Well said. And on that note, we'll continue our exploration of this topic in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we'll be looking into even more sophisticated scams
Mm.
and talk about how we can stay ahead of the curve in this ongoing battle against fraud.
Stay tuned. It's crazy to think that these small-time scams, like messing with gift cards, can actually be part of something much bigger, like a whole other criminal world.
It really is. It's like there's this whole underground system operating right in front of us. And I think part of the reason it's so widespread is because these scams are just so easy to pull off, like deceptively easy.
Yeah, the Tommy G video we talked about earlier really showed that,
Right.
they were so casual about punching chicken, using
Yeah.
stolen credit card data to just order food online. It felt almost too easy. It makes me wonder, is this mostly a problem with online transactions, or are there similar scams happening in physical stores too?
That's a good question, and the answer is both. Online and offline transactions are vulnerable to these scams. Remember the Target gift card case we talked about?
Right, where they tampered with the cards in the store
So
before
there's-
they were even purchased.
Right. And then there are those gas station skimmers that Tommy G mentioned.
Right.
Those capture your credit card info and PIN when you swipe at the pump.
It seems like no matter how we choose to pay, there's always some level of risk.
That's true. But being aware of those risks is a really important first step in protecting ourselves. And that's really what we're trying to do in this deep dive. Give you the knowledge you need to make informed decisions and stay safe.
Absolutely, knowledge is power. So let's talk about some practical tips to protect ourselves, both online and offline.
Okay, let's start with some general advice. Always be really careful about sharing personal info online. Things like your full name, your address, your phone number, especially sensitive stuff like your social security number or bank account details.
And obviously never share your passwords.
Right. No legitimate company or organization is ever going to ask for your password over email or phone.
Right, so that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another important tip is to be aware of phishing scams.
Okay.
These are emails or texts that try to trick you into revealing personal info. They look like they're from a trusted source.
Right, like your bank or something.
Exactly like your bank or a favorite online store, but they're not.
They're so sneaky, those phishing emails.
They can be really convincing. Best rule of thumb is never click on links or open attachments.
Right.
Unless you're 100% sure who sent it.
Yeah, and if you're ever unsure about an email or a text, just contact the company directly.
Exactly. Now let's talk about shopping online. Make sure you're always shopping on secure websites.
Oh, okay, how do we know if a website is secure?
Look for the HTTPS at the beginning of the URL. And the little padlock icon in the address bar,
Oh yeah, that padlock.
that's your visual cue.
Good visual reminder.
Another thing to keep in mind is public Wi-Fi. Try to avoid using it for online shopping.
Okay, because it's not secure.
Right, public Wi-Fi networks are often not as secure. Someone could potentially intercept your information while you're making a purchase.
So better to stick to your home network or a trusted data connection.
Definitely. And this one might seem obvious, but make sure you have strong and unique passwords for all your online accounts.
When you say strong passwords, what does that mean exactly?
Well, a strong password should be at least 8 characters long and include a mix of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. And most importantly, use a different password for each account.
Oh, so not using the same one for everything.
Think about it like this. If you use the same key for your house, your car, and your office, and someone gets that key, they have access to everything.
That is a very good analogy. I'll admit I've been guilty of using the same password for multiple accounts. Time to step up my password game.
It's something we all need to be more mindful of.
Okay.
Let's talk specifically about those gift card scams again.
Okay.
We talked about this before, but it's worth repeating.
It's
It
important.
really is. Buy gift cards from behind the counter when you can, or from a locked case.
Right. Less opportunity for tampering that way.
Exactly. And always inspect the card carefully before you buy it. Look for any signs of tampering on the packaging, tears, scratches, areas that look like they were glued back together.
And what about those stickers that cover the pin on? Anything to look out for there?
Great question. Those stickers should be firmly attached. No peeling or lifting. If it looks damaged or loose, get a different card.
Good to know. Even if the packaging looks fine, there's still a chance the card itself could be messed with.
That's true, which is why you should check the balance of the card as soon as you can after you buy it.
Oh, right.
Most retailers have websites or phone numbers you can use to do that.
Right. So if the balance is 0 or lower than it should be, something's up and you can report it to the retailer immediately.
Exactly. And when it comes to reporting,
Yeah.
it's important to report any suspected gift card scams to the right authorities.
Who would that be? The retailer, the police,
Yeah.
the FBI?
It really depends. If you think a card has been tampered with at a specific store, tell the store manager.
Okay.
And if you've already bought the card and you think it's been compromised, you should report it to the retailer, and you can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC.
So we have a couple of options for reporting these crimes.
We do. And remember, even if you haven't been a victim yourself, reporting these scams can help law enforcement identify patterns and uncover these bigger operations.
So we can all help protect each other. It's a team effort.
Exactly. We're all in this together. You mentioned romance scams earlier.
I did.
Can you tell me a bit more about them? What makes them so sophisticated?
Yeah, what are romance scams all about?
Romance scams are kind of a perfect example of how scammers exploit people's emotions and vulnerabilities. They basically build trust and affection with their victims,
Oh, wow.
often through online dating apps or social media platforms.
So they basically create this fake online persona and catfish people with the goal of stealing money.
Exactly. Once they've gained the victim's trust, they start asking for money, usually claiming they have some sort of emergency, like a medical bill, a family crisis, or even money to travel to meet the victim in person.
That's just awful. People can be so vulnerable when they're looking for connection.
They are. The best advice is to be very, very cautious about who you trust online.
Okay.
Never send money or give out personal info to someone you haven't met in person.
And if someone you've met online starts asking for money, that should be a huge red flag.
Huge red flag. Another sophisticated scam to watch out for is called a business email compromise, or BEC scam.
Okay, BEC scam. What's that?
These scams typically target businesses or individuals who make wire transfers frequently.
Okay.
The scammer will hack into the victim's email account,
Right.
usually through phishing or malware, and then they basically monitor the victim's email communications.
So they're spying on their emails, basically waiting for a chance to steal money.
Right. Once they've identified a potential target,
I
they'll
see.
send an email from the victim's account,
Oh, wow.
pretending to be the victim, and instruct the recipient to wire money to a fake account.
That is sneaky.
It is. They're using the victim's own email account against them. It's very effective.
Yeah.
They often target businesses that are in the process of making big transactions, like real estate deals or international payments.
Makes sense. So businesses really need to have tight security on their email accounts.
Yeah, for sure. And they need to make sure their employees know about these scams. And for individuals, it's a good idea to double-check any email requests for wire transfers.
Especially if it seems unusual or out of character for the sender.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and verify it directly with the person or business involved.
Right. Better safe than sorry. We've talked about a lot of different scams today. It seems like these criminals are constantly coming up with new ways to trick people.
It's like a game of cat and mouse.
It is. So how do we stay ahead of the game? Any advice on staying informed about the latest scams and fraud prevention tips?
Well, you mentioned some good ones already.
Yeah.
The FTC and the FBI websites are both excellent resources.
Right.
And a lot of banks and credit card companies offer fraud alerts and security features
Right.
that can help protect your accounts.
Yeah. So lots of resources out there.
There are. And another thing is to stay up to date on current events. Scammers often use news stories or popular topics to create new scams.
Oh, wow. So just reading the news can help protect us.
Exactly. And finally, never underestimate the power of common sense. If something sounds too good to be true,
Right.
it probably is.
Trust your gut.
Exactly. If you ever feel pressured or uncomfortable or unsure about a situation, always err on the side of caution.
That's good life advice in general.
It is.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I want to leave you with one last thought. We've talked a lot about how to protect ourselves from scams,
Right.
but anyone can become a victim.
That's true. These scammers are really good at what they do.
They are. They're experts at manipulating people, making their scams look believable.
It's true. They prey on our trust and our emotions and our desire for convenience.
Exactly. So if you or someone you know has been a victim of a scam, please remember it's not your fault.
Right. These scammers are professionals. They're good at what they do.
Exactly. Don't blame yourself or feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Focus on reporting the scam
Right.
and take steps to protect yourself from further harm.
And reach out for support.
Yes, there are resources available to help victims, both emotionally and financially.
So remember, you're not alone.
You're not, and by working together and staying informed, we can make the world a safer place.
Absolutely. It's all about looking out for each other.
We're all in this together.
Well said. We'll wrap up this part of the discussion and continue our exploration in the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about some even more sophisticated scams and how to stay ahead of the curve in this never-ending battle against fraud.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's been really eye-opening to see how these small-time scams, like those gift card schemes, can be connected to larger criminal operations.
Yeah, it really highlights the complexity of the problem and how important it is to stay vigilant. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to talk about more sophisticated scams.
I did.
So let's dive into those. Have you ever heard of romance scams?
Romance scams, that sounds intriguing and maybe a little heartbreaking. What exactly are they?
They can be both, unfortunately. These scams usually involve someone creating a fake online persona
Okay.
to build a relationship with the victim, often through dating apps or social media.
So they basically catfish people, but with the goal of stealing their money.
Exactly. Once they've gained the victim's trust and affection, they'll start asking for money,
Okay.
often claiming to have some kind of emergency, like a medical bill or a family crisis,
Right.
or they might even need money to travel to meet the victim.
No, wow, that's awful. People can be so vulnerable when they're looking for connection.
They can. So the best way to protect yourself is to be really cautious about who you trust online.
Right.
Never send money or share your personal info with someone you haven't met in person.
That seems like good advice for any online interactions, really.
It is. And if anyone you've met online starts asking for money, that's a huge red flag.
Definitely a red flag. You mentioned another sophisticated scam earlier, something called a business email compromise or BEC scam.
Right, a BEC scam.
What happens in a BEC scam?
These scams typically target businesses or individuals who make wire transfers frequently.
Okay.
The scammer will hack into the victim's email account, often through phishing or malware.
Yeah.
Then they'll monitor the victim's email conversations.
So they're basically spying on their emails, waiting for an opportunity to steal money.
Exactly. Once they've identified a potential target, they'll send an email from the victim's account,
Oh, wow.
pretending to be the victim. And then they instruct the recipient to wire money to a fake account.
That is so sneaky. They're using the victim's own email against them.
It's a clever tactic, and unfortunately, it's very effective. They often target businesses that are in the process of making large transactions, like real estate closings or international payments.
Right. So it seems like businesses really need to have strong security measures to protect their email accounts and make sure employees are aware of these types of scams.
You're absolutely right. And for individuals, it's always a good idea to double-check any email requests for wire transfers, especially if it seems unusual or out of character for the sender.
So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and verify the request with the person or business involved.
Exactly. Better to be safe than sorry. We've talked about a lot of scams today. It seems like these criminals are always coming up with new ways to trick people.
It's like a never-ending game of cat and mouse.
It is. So it's really important to stay informed about the latest scams and fraud prevention techniques.
Besides listening to podcasts like this one, are there other things we can do to stay informed?
Of course, the FTC and FBI websites are both great resources for information about scams.
Right, you mentioned that before.
And a lot of banks and credit card companies offer fraud alerts and security features
Right.
that can help protect your accounts.
So there are a lot of resources out there.
There are. It's really just about taking the time to educate yourself and stay vigilant.
Right. Because knowledge is power.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's especially important when it comes to protecting ourselves from scams and fraud.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that scammers often exploit news stories or popular topics to create new scams.
Yeah, that's right.
So just staying up to date on current events and following reputable news sources can help us stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. And never underestimate the power of common sense. If something sounds too good to be true,
Right.
it probably is.
Trust your gut.
Exactly. If you ever feel pressured or uncomfortable or unsure about a situation, just err on the side of caution.
That's good life advice in general.
It is. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how to protect ourselves from scams,
Right.
but anyone can become a victim.
That's true. These scammers are really good at what they do.
They are. They're experts at manipulating people, making their scam seem completely believable.
Yeah, they prey on our trust and our emotions and, our desire for convenience and things like that.
Exactly. So if you or someone you know has fallen victim to a scam,
Mm-hmm.
please remember that it's not your fault.
Right. Don't beat yourself up about it. These scammers are professionals.
They are. Don't blame yourself or feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Just focus on reporting the scam to the right authorities and taking steps to protect yourself from further harm.
And reach out for support. There are resources out there to help victims, both emotionally and financially.
Absolutely. Remember, you're not alone. And by working together and staying informed, we can create a safer and more secure world for everyone.
Well said. It's really all about looking out for each other.
We're all in this together.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of gift card and credit card scams. We hope you found it helpful and informative.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Remember, knowledge is power. By staying informed, being vigilant, and trusting your instincts, you can stay one step ahead of these scammers. Until next time, keep diving deep,